Hi guys, it's Carrie with Rockin Farm. Today I am going to try to get some blueberry, blackberry, and raspberry bushes planted in the ground. We're going to have a couple of days of rain, and that's a perfect time to plant your plants so that you don't have to worry about coming back out and watering them. If you can see right through here, this fence line right here, that is the fence line from the big dog pen, and I am going to be planting my plants over there to try to give me a little bit of privacy from the dogs, just to kind of mask them a little bit. But right now I'm going to start with a blueberry bush, and I will let you see what we're going to be using. I am going to be using some of this in-ground garden soil to help mix with my soil acidifier, because we have a pH of 5 already on our ground, but since I am going to be mixing the soil in with it, I want to make sure that this soil comes down with the pH, so I don't want there to be too much transplant shock with my plants. And then I will be using the polytone for fertilizer. It is for acid-loving plants, so we'll give them a boost of fertilizer along with planting them in their new home. Okay guys, one thing to remember is even though your plants come small, they will grow big. So this plant is going to grow 6 to 8 feet high and 5 to 6 feet wide. So I'm going to be leaving enough space so that this is not going to encroach on the fence and then bother the dogs. This area back here is going to be more of our herb garden and our fruit patch. So we know that this is going to be kind of overrun with blueberry plants, blackberry plants, and raspberry plants. One thing that we just noticed, we're cleaning up the dog pen. Right over there, you can see it, is a hump of greenery. That is Arkansas wild blackberries. So I've got all my blackberries and blueberries and raspberries on this fence line, along with a wild blackberry patch out there. At some point I will go out there and try to stake them up, because they tend to just go wild and you really can't get in there really good with them because they have tons of thorns. But I'm going to go in there and try to stake them up with some wooden stakes and some string so that I can make them in the position that I want them to be, so that I can go in there and reach them. But right now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to dig my hole. I want my hole to be just a tad bigger than my 1 gallon bucket. One thing that you need to remember on blueberries, they do not like to be planted deep. So you'll need to make sure that the crown of your plant, which is right here, this is the crown of your plant, you want to make sure that that is level with the ground or just a little bit above. And since this has a little bit of a slope, I'm going to make sure that it's just a little bit above ground so that I don't have to worry about letting it rot from the crown of the plant soaking in water. My husband did go through this area with weed killer earlier so that we can keep all the weeds down. It's going to be a long process because this is our second summer in this home. So you get what you put into it, so it's going to take a long time and a long process. Our soil's clay and a little sandy, so we have areas that are more compact than others, especially when I'm going around spot to spot to spot. I'm beginning to notice that a lot. It did say on our soil analysis that we did have some sandy soil mixed in with our clay soil. So this looks kind of a little soft. If I'm just gonna mix the rest of that soil in with it along with my amendments, and I think that this is gonna be a good spot to start these fruit roll with my blueberries and my blackberries and my raspberries. Okay, so as you can see back here, we have lots of cedar trees. I believe we had some cedar trees in this area too before we put the house here. There is a big cedar tree root. So I am gonna have to go around that a little bit. You can hear that? That's that big old root. So I'm just gonna pop the plant just a couple more inches forward. Trying to make sure that none of this area around where I'm going to be planting in this hole is really compacted, and so far it's not. It's really coming off really well. It doesn't take a lot of effort to go through the soil, so this is going to be a good spot for this blueberry bush. So now we're going to add some soil acidifier and some garden soil just to help make sure that this stays aerated really well. This also has some feed in it along with the polytone that I'm going to be using. My husband's bringing me my garden gypsum. Garden gypsum is a calcium supplement that helps to break down clay soil so that it becomes, you can't find it? I'll get it. It helps to break down clay soils. So let me go find my garden gypsum and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I've got my garden gypsum. I'm going to put, I'll leave it 2 scoops full of that. And we'll mix that into the bottom of the soil. Add a little bit of this Miracle-Gro soil. You know, guys, the more that you amend on the front end, the better it's going to be on your plants. Give them a good base to start out with, and they will produce for you extremely well. Okay, so I'm going to mix this Miracle-Gro soil into the bottom of this soil with the natural soil that was in the hole. This is kind of what we did over when we were planting our orchard, when we added all the amendments over there. I'm just making sure that there's no big clumps of soil in here, so that they won't be hiding air pockets. Okay, that looks really good. Okay, so now since I added the Miracle-Gro garden soil, I am going to add just a little bit of the soil acidifier just to make sure that this soil comes down to a low pH, because my berry plants or berry trees, my blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, they like acidic soils. So ours is a 5 right now. With me adding that, that's probably going to bring it up just a little bit. So I want to make sure that I keep it acid loving for my acid loving plants. And I'm just mixing that up really well in this soil that I had in here from the original soil and the soil that I added with the Miracle-Gro. And that looks really good. That's not too clumpy, too compact. I think that's gonna work. Okay. So now I'm going to put a little bit of the polytone in here. This is the actual fertilizer for acid-loving plants like your rhododendron. I'm going to put just a little bit of that in there. Then I'm going to mix that up a little bit just on the top layer. I'm not going to go all the way down, like folding it all the way in, just kind of mixing it on the top layer of that, because that's where the roots are going to be for right now. I've got that mixed in really well. Looking good. Doesn't look like we have any roots that are bound or anything. We're looking good, and I watered it really well before I started this process. I didn't want to shock it at all. I know it's going to shock, but I didn't want to add to the shock. Okay. So I'm just going to mix up half and half of the original soil, and then I'm going to add some more of the Miracle-Gro, and then I will add just a little bit more of the soil acidifier on top of that. Hi, you watching me? Are you hot? Yeah, it's already hot out here, isn't it? Soil acidifier on top. And work that in a little bit. Now, if you were going to use a pot to use your blueberries or your blackberries for that matter, and you were going to use soil like this in a pot, what you would need to do is do the same thing we're doing here. But instead of planting your plant in that pot the day that you do that, you need to give at least 1 to 2 weeks for this soil acidifier to work in with that soil to make that soil come down to the pH that it needs to help your plant grow. Because if you have a plant that's acid-loving plant, and you just go ahead and put it in without mixing it in, or put it in the day that you mix it in, that soil's not going to be at the right pH yet, because this has to break down in your pot in order to bring that pH down. Now, if you're going, well, you just put it in the ground like that, I know, but my pH is already 5. So I know that my pH is good, and I'm just adding a little bit of soil to give a better boost to the beginning of the plant. So that's why I'm doing it this way. But if you're doing it in a pot or a bucket, you'll need to do your amendments in that pot and bucket and let it sit. Put a little water in it and mix it up really well and let it sit for about 1 to 2 weeks so that that soil can come to the right pH for your plant. And I'm going to leave these on so people will know that those are plants and not a weed. Now I'm just going to water it in. I will come back back with some more water and put it on that because I really want it to get real good and deep and soak this whole hole for that. Let me go ahead and get some more of these plants in before the sun sets, and I will show you the finished product. Okay guys, thanks for joining me tonight as I planted my blueberry, blackberry, and raspberry garden. So hopefully this year we'll be able to get a couple of blueberries and maybe a couple of blackberries out of that, and just make what you have beautiful garden. So hopefully this year we'll be able to get a couple of blueberries and maybe a couple of blackberries out of that, and just make what you have beautiful.